Namaskar to all of you.
Namaskar.
Sunita ma'am, may we begin?
Namaskar, ma'am.
Ma'am, shall we begin?
Yes, Priya. Yes.
Namaste.
Thank you, ma'am. My heartiest welcome to all of you to this program of awareness about NEP to sensitize and to understand the features of NEP. Today we have with us great personalities like Professor S.P. Tyagarajan, the former Vice Chancellor of Madras University. Listening to him about the multidisciplinary education and academic bank of credit is Valmiki himself coming and describing Ramayana, because he is the authentic author of it. Now, friends, we have with us also Professor Vaidya Subramaniam, who is the Vice Chancellor of Shastra Deemed University, Tamil Nadu, who will be speaking about integration of Indian languages, interdisciplinary education, distance education, and online education. And indeed, it's a great pleasure to have Professor N. Jayashankaran, the former Vice Chancellor of Sri Chandrasekhara Saraswati Vishwa Mahavidyalaya, Kanjipuram, Tamil Nadu. Friends, indeed, it is a great opportunity for us to meet in a platform, discuss and understand about the features of NEP with all these great personalities presenting about the same. Now, to go about the program, after the presentation of Professor S.P. Tyagarajan, we will have a small question and answer session because he would like to leave for an important preoccupied meeting of this. And after that, we would have the presentation of Professor S. Vaidya Subramanian and Professor N. Jayashankaran, after which we will have the discussion about these two lectures or the question and answers about these two lectures. Meanwhile, if you have any questions also, please use the chat box to post your questions. We will take it up. Ma'am, may I request Dr. Sujata Chanbag, the advisor of NAAC, to please welcome the gathering by a formal welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Priya. Namaskar, distinguished speakers of this program, Professor Tyagarajan, Professor Vaidya Subramaniam, and Professor Jayashankaran. Dear teachers, IPSC coordinators, professors, principals from the different parts of northeastern regions of India, and my dear colleagues, I welcome on behalf of NAAC and on my personal behalf to this important awareness program on NEP. Ministry of Education has given the responsibility to NAAC to help the HAIs in understanding and implementing the NEP, and they have given us some of the parameters. Those are multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary education, academic bank of credit, skill development, appropriate integration of Indian knowledge system, in Indian language culture, and outcome-based education. And I would like to tell you, NAAC will be including some of the aspects or some of the questions on these parameters in the manual, but not as metric. It is not for the evaluation, but how you are doing to know the things. We are including it in the SSR profile section titled Institutional Preparedness for NEP. In this context, this will be helpful to the institutions to understand the NEP, these aspects of the NEP, and in turn, it will help the HAI in implementing them. Because we have experts who have worked in different teams of NEP preparation and implementation, and who will be sharing their knowledge and ideas about these parameters. Already, Dr. Priya has introduced them to you. Without taking much time, I would like to welcome you once again for this important program. Priya.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Sir, Professor S.P. Tyagarajan, sir, may I please invite you to please start your presentation on multidisciplinary education and academic bank of credit. Please, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Hope I am audible now.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sujata Shanbhag and Dr. Priya Narayan from NAAC, and respected Dr. Jayashankaran, respected Dr. Vaiti Subramaniam, and the host of distinguished educationists from Northeast who have assembled for this particular program online. We thank NAAC for having given this opportunity to interact with you all on the salient aspects of the NEP 2020. I will just try to share my slides and try to take you through in the next about 20 minutes or so. So on the topic that has been alerted. Just only 1 second. Are you able to see the slides, madam?
We are not able to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Not able to see.
No.
Is visible? Is it visible, madam? No?
Yes, it is visible.
Sir, it is visible, sir. Visible.
It has appeared on
Thank
the
you.
screen.
Thank you. See, the title of my talk today, as suggested by NAAC, is Holistic and Multidisciplinary Education and the Academic Bank of Credit, as it has been notified by the UGC Regulation 2021, which has been notified on the 28th July 2021. This has formed an important component of the National Education Policy 2020, and it has been taken up as a mechanism of the outcome pillars of the NEP 2020, wherein it is put that the actual kind of the stress for the outcome pillars of NEP 2020 has been a transformation from insisting upon teaching to learning and relearning and lifelong learning, from the level of rigidity as it has been existing now to a realm of flexibility, from the situation of working in silos in educational institutions, transforming to holistic and multidisciplinary education, instead of making our students as users of knowledge, to transform them as creators of knowledge. And again, instead of just making them as job seekers, you transform them as job providers and job promoters, was the essential outcome pillars of this. How will you get this done? Well, in the next slide, போல பாரு. Click பண்ணு. Okay. So the integration of Indian education with the 21st century university education has been the thrust on these pillars, wherein the first component being holistic and multidisciplinary higher education reforms, integration of ancient Indian education with the 20th century higher education, synergy of vocational education with regular education, value education as integral component of education, Lok Vidyas to be inculcated to the student using native expertise, reframing skill education with internship and incubation centers, and further integration of global citizenship education in tune with Sustainable Development Goal 4, and strengthening of Indian classical languages, literature, and scientific vocabulary of Indian languages. All this getting synergized with functionalization of e-education along with face-to-face education, giving equal recognition to all of them. பின்னாடி போறீங்க. The genesis of the multidisciplinary education as envisaged in the NEP 2020 is based on the 64 kalas which are conventionally called as arts and 14 vidyas which are considered as techniques in the ancient India. Even Sri Rama, Lakshmana and others have had these 64 kalas educated in the ancient India, and that has been well documented. These 64 arts have always been having multidisciplinary approaches with languages, mathematics, astronomy, sculptures, and music, drama, dance. Everything has been combined to bring about a holistic, multi-talented kind of individual. That is how it has been genised. Even in the education in ancient India, where Nalanda, Dakshashila and others were there, it has attracted students from all over India and also from Tibet, China, Central Asia, Indonesia, etc., with residential facilities of more than 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers. And in fact, several people from China and others have appreciated the curriculum, which included scriptures, philosophy, medicine, logic, etc., etc. And this has been well documented by Chanakya, Panini, Chandragupta Maurya, Aryabhatta, and so on and so forth. So such is the kind of ancient value that has been there, which is being envisaged to be brought in together. And that is what has been mentioned in chapter 11 of the new education policy 2020 as towards a more holistic education, wherein it is expected and comprehended that a comprehensive holistic education across the field will develop all capacities of human beings to develop well-rounded individuals who will possess critical 21st century capacities and skill. And this is envisaged that in the long term, this approach will be in all undergraduate programs, including those includes professional, technical, and vocational disciplines. The assessment of educational approaches in undergraduate education, which will integrate humanities, arts with science, technology, environment, and medicine, have shown positive outcomes in various international universities also because they bring about critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, communication skills, more in-depth learning and mastery of the curricula. And that is why this has been suggested, and with the aim of holistic and multidisciplinary education to develop intellectual, aesthetic, social, physical, emotional, and moral capabilities in an integrated manner, and to develop capacities in the field across the arts, humanities, languages, sciences, social sciences, and professional, technical, and vocational fields, but also to impart ethics of social engagement, soft skills, and discussion, debate, and rigorous specialization. So this has been the concept with which bringing in multidisciplinary education with arts, humanities, social sciences, and professional education have been put as the aim of the holistic education. How will you enable, how will you create an ecosystem for such a holistic multidisciplinary education? It is proposed that departments of languages, literature, music, philosophy, Indology, art, dance, theater, applied sciences, statistics, economics, sports, and all departments will be started in a multidisciplinary manner to stimulate Indian education, and the environment will be established or strengthened in the higher education institutions across the country. And they will also be encouraged to start courses in such department. This could also be on the ODL mode or in the face-to-face mode, which will help the students to derive these kind of talents and skill and attitude. So for which you also require creative combinations of disciplines, and also will encourage multiple entry and multiple exit, which will give an avenue of lifelong learning for them at the graduate level, or at the master's and doctoral level education as well, which could be a research-based specializations wherein the multidisciplinary work not only in academic institution but also in partnership with government departments and industries, for which autonomy in the curriculum framework is necessary, and that has been proposed in the new education policy to provide autonomy to the universities and the faculty to develop their own curricula. So it is encouraged that this kind of a pedagogy will be less rote learning, but more cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary thinking. So final recommendation in the NEP 2020 is to provide flexibility of subjects with multiple entry, multiple exit. The UGC program can be 3 or 4 years duration. And if a students want to go and come back little later, they can go with a certificate depending upon the year they spent, or diploma, or PG diploma, or complete the whole thing and get a degree. Then the postgraduate program, the postgraduate program can be 1 to 2 years and integrated 5-year bachelor's and master program, and they have decided to discontinue the MPhil program. In order to facilitate this, a credit transfer mechanism has been encouraged, and to implement it in the country, the concept of academic bank of credits has been envisaged, and it is already implemented through a UGC regulation. Since this is a novel concept, the NEP 2020 also encourages setting up of model multidisciplinary education and research universities called MERU almost in every district across the country, which has been one of the components that is envisaged. So now let us see what is the need for academic bank of credits. So I have listed the various kind of avenues of autonomy, flexibility, and mobility of the students. In order to satisfy all these purposes, it is proposed that there shall be an academic bank of credit, which could digitally store the academic credits earned by various recognized higher education institutions, so that the degrees from an HEI can be awarded taking into account the credits earned by the students. Very simply, I can tell you that every student in the country from a recognized institution will be eligible to open a bank account, academic bank account in the academic bank of credit. Like everybody has got a financial account in a financial bank, they will be able to have an account called academic account in this particular ABC. And this particular bank will be operated by means of a special purpose vehicle as a digital virtual online entity, and to be established and managed by the Ministry of Education and the University Grants Commission. And they will be able to overall coordinate with all the academic account holders. Like you draw money from a financial account, the account holders in the academic bank of credit will be able to get their credits accumulated and draw it as and when it is needed for getting a degree or a diploma or whatever the case may be. Another very important kind of advantage of it is it facilitates a seamless student mobility within inter and intra-university system through a formal system of credit recognition, credit accumulation, credit transfers, and credit redemption. The student, depending upon the aptitude, depending upon their requirement, they can take courses across the country in all the recognized institutions up to about 40% of the total credit for a degree program, and that can be brought into account by the host university while they are going to award the degrees. So there is an absolute autonomy to the students by providing full choice of courses of a program, flexibility in the curriculum. They can tailor their own program depending upon the formal kind of a credit weightages that are given for a program, and the credit transfer will become a regulatory provision as per the UGC regulation so that it gets authenticated and sanctified, and for which only the regulation has been notified. So by doing that, a student will be able to have a multiple entry. At the same time, the students can take courses from a university in Delhi or in any other parts of the country, whether it is in Mumbai or Calcutta or whatever, depends upon which course they want to take up, which institution they want to study, which teacher they want to be taught. All this can be given this kind of a flexibility to them. So to define the academic bank of credit, it is an academic service provider as a digital virtual online entity established and managed by Ministry of Education and UGC to facilitate all students of the specified higher education institution to become its academic account holders, to allow distributed learning system by creating a seamless student mobility in all the possible ways, and also through a formal system of credit recognition, credit accumulation, credit transfers, and credit redemption. So the objectives are very clearly laid out, wherein it is a student centricity with learner friendly approach that is the priority. The students are enabled to select the best courses or combination of courses to suit their aptitude and knowledge thirst, and also to select the best departments or institutions, and they will be permitted to choose the pace of their studies. They can tailor their degree program, and they will also have multiple entry and multiple exit, so that they can go with a diploma or with a degree or with a PG diploma or certificate across, and through which there will also be national level integration across the campuses and universities. Universities can get network, departments can get collaborations, and besides the student getting benefited, the institutions are also getting enormous kind of networking and collaboration. Finally, this will satisfy the students' quest for knowledge, fulfilling all their dreams. Suppose the student wants to do psychology, but he has been given a seat in economics. He or she will be able to take the courses as they want in about 40% of the total credits that are assigned to that particular program. So there are specific functions that are given for the academic bank of credit. I will highlight only a couple of them for want of time. Only thing is the eligibility of the higher education institution to become the members of the academic bank of credit has been very clearly mandated that they must be NAAC-A grade accredited institutions. Then only they will become members, and they can have this kind of credit transfer and student mobility with another NAAC-A graded higher education institution across the country. And all these NAAC-A grade accredited institutions should follow the same pattern of the credit system under the choice-based credit system, which is already approved by the University Grants Commission, because UGC has already defined what do we mean by one credit for theory, what do we mean by one credit for lab-based programs, and so on and so forth. So these are all well defined, and this could be looked into. And the major functions of the academic bank of credit will verify whether these conditions are satisfied for the credit, and they will accumulate into the account of the student whatever credits has been earned, and it will transfer it as and when it is requested by the students or by the institution after authenticating it, and after a period of time which will be prolonged as per the requirements of the student, it will also close the account after the credits have been fully utilized. In this, online programs are given equal weightages like the face-to-face program, including the programs under SOAM and other national kind of portals. So this kind of amalgamation of the various existing and futuristic teaching learning models, which will counter the stigma associated with distance and on-job learning. So this will create much more opportunities to improve the GER as well. Since we are targeting the GER of the country to be reached to 50% by 2035, by this kind of equalization of both online and offline kind of a systems, it will improve the GER also. That is then the credit acquired under the ABC is flexibly kept for a longer duration of time, initially for 7 years, and may be extended as per the request of the students. There is also a monitoring system that has been put in there because the quality monitoring becomes very important. This is applicable to autonomous colleges and the universities. The teachers who are associated with that will be given proper faculty development programs, quality improvement programs, as well as the technology improvement programs, etc., professional development programs, and so on. This monitoring function has been allocated as one of the function of the internal quality assurance cell of the member organization or member university of the ABC. And also it will be updated and put up on the website as well. I will just close it with the statement that the optimum learning environment and support for students will also be created, because naturally there are several acts, statutes, and other kind of guidelines that are to be framed, wherein students will also be brought into the center point so that they will be involved in the decision-making bodies and their feedback will also be taken. The institutional development plan, as suggested in the NEP 2020, will also include this. The last point that I would like to tell you is there are certain challenges through various feedback mechanisms we have been able to get, that transforming the diverse type of universities into multidisciplinary university may be a challenge. Introduction of amendments to the action statutes of different types of university will be another challenge. Starting new schools and departments will be yet another one to be organized well. Integrating vocational education with formal education should have to be taken, and preparedness of the institution for extreme flexibility through the choice-based credit system and the credit transfer system will have to be taken into consideration. And the special purpose vehicle that is now being constituted at the UGC will have to take up the overall responsibility of implementing it across the country. So if we could do that, this multidisciplinary education and academic bank of credit will see all our youngsters smiling and having a futuristic kind of higher education and employability in this particular country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we can take up few questions on the knowledge shared by Professor S.P. Tyagarajan. Interested person who would like to ask any questions, may please raise your hand so that we can coordinate the session. The option, we have Professor M.P. Bora. Sir, you may please unmute yourself and put forth your question, please.
Hello, very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening with your nice presentation. I am the director of IQAC of Guwahati University. I just want to, because, for example, as we know that as NEP NEP is going to be implemented in the near future. So we have change of courses, for example, master degrees. I mean, it is prescribed to be 1 year and it's like a 4 year like that. So how will the transition really take place? Do you have any clear-cut advice? Like, I mean, like, or will there be any guidelines for the university to adherence to a specific date or year of when this will be started, and how we are going to handle the transitions, for example?
The Government of India has now constituted a curriculum and pedagogy development committee and it is supposed to be submitting its report in about 3 months' time. This happened about a month ago. In 22-23, it is expected that the universities must be able to implement the curricular reforms, adopting and implementing the multidisciplinary education. The Academic Bank of Credit regulation has already been notified. So when both the things are available, the universities can take up these two guidelines and regulations and get it adopted by the academic bodies like the academic council and governing council and so on, after which necessary amendments have to be made in the university statutes as and where it is necessary, so that the boards of studies will be able to modify their own curricula and syllabi to suit the model curriculum that will be provided by this Ministry of Education committee that is working on under the chairmanship of Dr. Kasturi Rangan. And so 22-23 is going to be a very crucial year for all the academic reforms that are going to take place. These seminars of this kind are to sensitize our educational leaders to work upon it and to see if there are going to be any bottlenecks that can be addressed. We can even submit our feedback to these committees, which will be able to take up while implementation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we have Dr. Sudipto Bhattacharya. Sir, please, you may please unmute yourself and put forth your question.
Good afternoon, and it's really a great privilege to hear Dr. Tyagarajan. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Sir, I have few skepticism in my mind. We already know that we have privatized a lot our educational system in India, and what we understood is the coexistence, whether it is peaceful or conflicting, between the private universities, public universities, autonomous colleges, so on and so forth. Now, when we are talking about academic bank of credits, somewhere in some countries, we also find that if I am a student and I couldn't make it into a premier institute, but I took a admission in an institute which is in private space and I have done pretty well. Say I have got a very high CGPA and I want to migrate within the institute or outside the institute to a better institute where I require credit transfer, right? So what happens is whether the private players are ready to sacrifice profit in the second year of my MBA course or of my engineering third and fourth year course and leave me to another institute of repute so that I can have my credit transferred. This is a real life practical example, I feel so, because in the space of education, we have profiteering motives running riot. This is the first question I have. Over to you, sir, for your answer.
Thank you. It is a very good question. It needs to be clarified positively. The first thing that I would like to tell you is there are very good eligibility criteria that has been laid out, that institutions which have got A grade NAAC accreditation alone are eligible for it, so that the quality of higher education in the universities are kept almost equal. That is number one. Number two, whether it is private or government sector institution, quality alone is kept on the benchmark. Thirdly, it is not that students are going to be physically transferring themselves to the partner universities. No. When a student has registered with an X university, he or she will continue to study in that university and get the degree awarded by that university. The only provision that is given here is that out of the total number of courses, for example, in a particular BSc program, there are about 84 courses in which 40% of the courses the student can take it from other institutions, just courses only, something like earlier days we used to talk about papers. Now they are called as courses. So each course may have 4 credits or 3 credits as per the UGC specification. So when they do those courses, for example, in JNU or Delhi University or Calcutta University and so on and so forth, those credits will be transferred to the parent university and the academic bank of credits. So it will get accumulated on the name of the student. So the student will decide how they can get the total number of credits required for a BSc program with whatever subjects they are choosing, and that will be fitted in the total degree requirement for a particular university. When the degree is awarded, the degree will be awarded from that particular parent university name, but indicating where are the places where the student has taken these courses for 40 credits on the back of the degree certificate. That is what has been specified. Hence, there cannot be any confusion whatsoever wherein a student will physically get to another university. It is not going to be there. Only possibility is if the student does not want to complete it or not able to cope up well within the specified period of 3 years or 4 years, they can get the extension up to about 7 years to complete the degree as per the pace of learning of the particular student. That is what has been provided for.
Dr. Tyagarajan, actually in another NEP webinar and a panel discussion I was a part, where a participant, a erudite professor, he asked a question about the social justice of being educated in India. And what I understood from his question actually is, he is asking what is the cost of education? Why it is so much differential between various institutes which are offering? So NEP does not lay any emphasis there because ultimately it is deep into the pocket of the person who wants to get educated. Is there any guideline for NEP regarding the cost of education, cost of a degree?
Actually, there is a general guideline, generic guideline that is there in the NEP 2020 to see the affordability of the courses and the programs are to be taken into consideration. That is already given there. And it has also proposed enlarging the scope of the scholarship portal and so on. In a policy document, the finer details of stepwise methodology is normally not given. That is where the regulations are being notified by the regulatory councils and the bodies like the academic bank of credits. So you will have, as a period goes on, for each and every aspect, specific guidelines, norms, and regulations will be coming into forefront. So every university will have no confusion in implementing them.
So still we have to be regulatory compliant. And once we understood that NEP will give a lot of autonomy, but ultimately cost of education, price of a degree, it still has to have some amount of control. Otherwise, we know what happens in school education, where there are private players charging hefty amount of money. Even in HEIs also, the same thing is happening. Thank you, sir, for your time for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Sir, in addition to that, you may please refer to page number 48 and 49 of NEP document, where they have talked about commercialization of education, how to check it, and also about fixing up of the upper limit of fee, which is available in page number 49, just for your reference, please.
Thank you so much.
Now, may I request Professor Dikranjit Goswami to please unmute yourself and put forth your question, please. Sir, you're not audible. You have to unmute yourself, sir.
Am I?
Doctor, yeah, you're audible now. Please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hello, sir. My question to you, I'm from Assam Don Bosco University, Guwahati. My question is, how much autonomy will be given to the universities as far as admitting students from other universities completing some semesters and coming with some credits from their academic bank of credit. For example, in our university, we have a system of grading where we give a grading level based on a range of marks which are attained by the students. If a student comes from another university completing some semesters where the marks would not be from a grading system but from absolute marking system, and how will that be considered? Whether there will be autonomy given to the universities for considering such students' conversion of marks into grading, or such kind of situations may arise. So my question to you is regarding that. How much of autonomy will be there to the universities to admit such students?
Thank you. Thank you. It is also another important question, a practical issue. In fact, there will be 100% autonomy to the faculty and to the university. However, the UGC is now revising the choice-based credit system so that the credit awarding pattern and also the assessment pattern is getting streamlined now, so that all the member universities of the ABC Bank will have to adopt them and follow, so that, see, your Guwahati University students, when they come to Madras University, the equivalence of these credits and all that does not pose any problem for transfers and all that. That is where the ABC will verify the credits also, whether it has been done as per the revised countrywide norms. So that issue will be fully taken care of. And also this will include a kind of an internationalization component, so that our own students who get a kind of a credit, those credits could in future can also be transferred to a foreign university and vice versa. So that kind of a facilitation is being done. But a direct question for your answer is, the faculty will be given full autonomy, and that will be ingrained in the institutional development plan that is supposed to be prepared and got approved from the BOG by individual universities.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, I think there are no more questions for this session, and we thank you very much for being patiently answering to all the questions and enlightening us much more deeper into the concepts. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Priya.
Now, moving ahead, may I request Professor S. Vaidya Subramaniam, the Vice Chancellor of Sastra Deemed University, Tamil Nadu, to please present his views on integration of Indian languages, interdisciplinary education, distance education, and online education. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. A very good afternoon, and thank you very much, NAAC, for making me a part of this webinar in which I'm able to connect with over 200 of my academic peer friends from the Northeast region. And I must say that it is only organizations like NAAC can assemble a very distinguished audience of this type. And I'm very happy that I'm able to address such an distinguished audience, and also in the process also learn certain best practices that come out of the Northeastern region. And I, with very fond memories, recall my visit to the Central University of Nagaland a few years back. Of course, we wouldn't forget the tasty pineapples of the Northeastern region. So with those fond memories, let me begin my very brief presentation, which is going to just extend in a part from where Dr. S.P. Tyagarajan left, and then cover a very important policy contours of online and distance education. And lastly, certain directional pointers on language integration. And all of this centered around the theme of NEP 2020. Now, the NEP 2020 by itself, and I have written a number of articles on NEP 2020 with the underlying force and momentum that needs to be built, in the Prime Minister's own words, that the Indian higher education ecosystem has to emerge as the Vishwa Guru, a path that we should again recreate. And this is not something that is new to us. We have been the world's university in the past. And truly because of a variety of civilizational assets that we actually have with us, endowed with us, and continuously enrich them. In fact, the Indian Council for Research in International Economic Research in early 2000, they did a study to understand the propensity of civilizational assets. And in that report, you could find that the biggest temple was built in Cambodia, and that there is still a remote village somewhere in Vietnam where even Sanskrit is being spoken. So these types of civilizational assets of our country have reached and transcended geographical boundaries, not by any military supremacy, but the force with which, the velocity with which such civilizational assets can touch a larger learning ecosystem across the world was very evident from that report. So we must internalize to the fact that we are actually trying to retrace our original position of being the world's university. In that context, I have felt that the NEP is a policy goldmine for those who want to actually leverage on the various dimensions that it has, because every chapter that you touch is a goldmine of opportunity. And that's why I say it is a policy goldmine with a Midas touch. Midas is actually an acronym for the modularity that is available, the interdisciplinarity that is available, the diversity that is available, the accessibility that is also truly available, and the expected sustainability with which the NEP has to be implemented. In that sense, there are a lot of dimensions that the NEP throws open to higher educational institutions, either as an institutional policy or to individuals as faculties, as leaders of education institutions, to also implement certain things which can be done even without waiting for a regulatory policy or any statutory amendment. There are certain low-hanging fruits that are readily available. In my next few minutes, I'm just going to extend, as I said before, what Professor S.P. Tyagarajan started off as the framework of the holistic and multidisciplinary education, which in chapter 11 was clearly explained through the academic bank of credits. And since I'm also supposed to touch on interdisciplinarity, we are now at the crossroads of an integration of various disciplines of education that is actually going to kind of remove the popularity of STEM education. You know, science, technology, engineering, and maths, this has been popular. But somehow, higher education institutions should not be lost in the popularity, because popularity, I strongly believe, will always come with no invitation and leave with no farewell. But rather, we should look at a very composite model of higher education, which should integrate, along with STEM, maybe Indic arts, Indology, arts, humanities, social science. And that's why we have to broaden the scope of this multidisciplinary education from STEM to STEAMish, or you can come out with your own acronyms. And the other chapter on NEP devoted for ODL and online education. Chapter 24, in very brief abstract, covers the policy contours of ODL and online education. And in my personal view, I think the concept of ODL should gradually disappear. In the age of today's technology revolution, of course, the need for brick and mortar institutions will always be there. But what we need to do is how we can integrate bits and bytes of knowledge into brick and mortar institutions to ensure that this physical and digital combination creates a phygital ecosystem for higher education institutions, which gradually will to a certain extent embrace online education. And I personally feel that the concept of ODL itself must gradually get extinguished. Concept of ODL is very antiquated for the present paradigms of higher education. Thirdly, chapter 22 again very clearly and exhaustively explains about the various facets of language, arts, culture in making Bharat the global thought leader by integrating its own Indian knowledge systems as part of mainstream education. So with this backdrop, I'm just going to touch upon a few policy milestones that I feel is essential, both at the individual level and at the institutional level, beginning with interdisciplinary education. The word interdisciplinary education has sometimes created more confusion than clarity. So let me first begin because I always rely on Glasbergen's cartoons to convey some message. As the cartoon says, no interdisciplinary education program is not where a physics student tries to hit psychology students with pendulums. And then you call that interdisciplinary education. Or it is not an instrument where a faculty who cannot handle core programs gets some weird idea and asks students to do certain things in the name of interdisciplinary education. We need to understand with great clarity three important things: why it is necessary, what is interdisciplinary education, and more importantly, what is not interdisciplinary education, and how as institutions and individuals we should prepare ourselves to get into this framework of the interdisciplinarity. Why, to begin with, is a very fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves as leaders of institutions, as faculty, and as policymakers of the institutional strategic vision. Because we need to understand that we are no longer going to be students of some subject to claim subject matter expertise, but students of problems whose solutions cut right across the borders of different subject matters across academic disciplines. And that's true because the world now has realized that we are today living in a complex, intertwined way of life that poses challenges, solutions to which doesn't lie within a specific domain, a specific academic discipline. For example, many of you know this popular analogy of globalization that was linked with Princess Diana's death. That an English princess who was actually traveling inside a French tunnel in a German car, powered by a Dutch engine driven by a Hungarian driver under the influence of a Scottish whiskey, gets into an accident treated by an American doctor working with Brazilian medicine. And we come to know of this through various technology tools that were developed by Indian software engineers. And these tools packed in computers assembled somewhere in Singapore using Taiwanese chips, and this can go on and go on. That's the analogy of globalization. And if you have to just kind of reproduce this in the context of interdisciplinarity, we should understand that the borders between academic disciplines, I'm not saying they are disappearing, but they are actually getting integrated in a seamless manner, and not to address problems to solutions within the silos of academic disciplines, but then work together to provide a solution for the world's problem by making them integrate effectively. Because today, a solution is no longer a regional solution or a local solution. Any solution has global impact, and that's the type of problems that interdisciplinary education needs to address. For example, the one that I show in the Venn diagram, if you have to be a world-class epidemiologist, you have to have certain amounts of knowledge as a clinical researcher, biological molecular scientist, or biostatisticians, or social and behavioral researchers. If I'm not able to do all of this, at least have a program that blends all of this. Second, what is interdisciplinary education? It is a kind of an internal collaboration between subject matter experts within an institution that provides a seamless pathway through which such experts can be drawn from more than one academic disciplines to work towards a common identified goal. So this is where we have to very clearly understand what is not interdisciplinary education, because we usually confuse interdisciplinary with multidisciplinary education. In multidisciplinary education, researchers usually from more than one disciplines work together on a common problem. But what happens is they don't alter the thought process of the disciplinary approach to which they are constantly wedded, or develop a common conceptual framework that can provide a solution to the larger problem. So interdisciplinarity has to definitely remove that mindset and remove that mind block to go beyond common conceptual framework building to provide solutions to these global problems. It arises from a much needed conviction that traditional disciplines, I'm not saying that traditional disciplines are not useful, but we should realize the fact that they alone will not be able to provide solutions to problems, or the unwillingness to involve more disciplines will actually not address an important global problem. So what needs to be triggered to address this issue of interdisciplinarity is to first understand the inherent complexity building between nature and society. We need to desire and explore problems and questions that no longer are confined to a single discipline. So that conceptual clarity at the university's strategic vision making level has to come. And only if that comes, we will be able to solve the societal problems that confront us almost on a day-to-day basis. And some common threads like new technologies can always make this process accelerate faster and create the last mile reach in an effective manner. Now, how do we do this? That is a big challenge. You might have ABC as a regulatory notification. You might have all sorts of policies in paper. But then as institutional leaders or as faculties ourselves, we have to internalize a comprehensive framework that can accommodate these interdisciplinarity in our higher education degree programs. And this has to come both from an epistemic level as well as a social level, because at the epistemic level, we should understand that it is all about what are the different ways of knowing through distinct tools, distinct languages, distinct ways of demonstrating knowledge, distinct ways of owning knowledge or the proprietariness mechanisms, and the social way of understanding how it works, where we need to clearly understand the boundaries of different disciplines getting merged together. And we need to accept the merging boundaries, come out with creative measurement techniques, certain experiences that can be formalized, and build a common culture of interdisciplinarity within individuals as well as institutions. And I will urge all the members of the academic community to also visit the Georgia Tech website. I tried doing this morning, but somehow temporarily that link is down, but they should be up soon. There is an interesting interactive tool, Maps of Science and Collaboration, where you choose one core area, a core academic discipline. It connects you with different interdisciplinary areas on which related work has happened, and they combined with the committee of the body of knowledge of all those interconnected areas clearly will give you a framework of interdisciplinarity on a chosen core. Now, this exercise, if not using Georgia Tech, we have to start doing it ourselves across all degree programs, whether it's UG or PG or PhD programs. We have to break the silos and conceptualize internally that interdisciplinary education is the way forward. And we have to coordinate with various resources, internal as well as external, contextualize your curriculum towards interdisciplinary education, and make sure it seamlessly gets integrated at all levels, not just at curriculum level. Curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, all of them have to be seamlessly integrated. And the only caution that I would like to add is that don't force fit any degree program into interdisciplinary education. Some programs need not necessarily be interdisciplinary education. So in the enthusiasm to make all programs interdisciplinary, don't force fit degree programs into that model, because some degree programs are delivered better in a non-interdisciplinary method. Moving forward, the second thing, this is also something that I'm very passionate about, distance and online education, which very briefly is dealt in part 4, section 24. Now, again, I use the same Glassberg. Today, we are in a state of confusion. I mean, terminological confusion. Some call it online, some call it distance education, some call it digital education, some call it hybrid education, some call it blended education, and the list goes on. But we are also faced with the realities that tells us Facebook is a website, but Charlotte's Web is a book. So we should not be deceived by the nomenclature in the name. We should understand the spirit behind the initiative. And that is very clear to understand the policy, and then the process that actually translates the policy into action, and the larger ecosystem of people that is involved to make this into a reality. The policy, as all of you very well know, is very clearly articulated in the UGC's latest regulations, ODL OL of 2020, where it enables universities to award certificates, diploma, degree in both the ODL as well as online fashion. Of course, with certain types of universities are eligible to offer them without the prior approval of the UGC. And still there are some policy hurdles, because the definition of prior approval itself has to be challenged now. Now, there are certain universities that can also approach UGC and get approval before offering these distance online programs. And I feel that there is a lot of potential areas in which, sorry, there is an audio disturbance.
Mr.
Yeah. So I feel that there is a lot of potential areas that many Indian universities can focus based on their core competency, rather than blindly offering popular programs. For example, universities in the Northeast, there is plenty of information that the world needs to know about the local culture, the communitarian law, the various civilizational assets of Northeast India, which actually may provide solutions to various problems that people elsewhere face. And these are courses that not only will open the eyes of the learning community in India, but also has an explosive export potential. So I, as I said before, strongly feel that there is also a need for some policy advocacy to kind of remove the concept of ODL, which I feel is very, very, very old, and replace with emerging paradigms of hybrid, blended, and phygital, which actually is a coherent synergy of physical education and digital education delivered in an online platform. And that mechanism has to be aligned with the goals of NEP 2020. And each university can actually come out with their own policy for online education. And the process that we need to follow, again, autonomy to be given to universities to undertake their own processes, because some of them get confused with a learning management system as a MOOC platform, while both are entirely different. And a MOOC platform also, there needs to be a lot of choices for universities. Swayam is good, but that doesn't mean that's the only platform that needs to be used. We also have to explore other emerging platforms like the TCS Ion or the Coursera or Udemy or other type of platforms upgrade. These can also be encouraged, and universities can use this opportunity. We need not necessarily consume courses that are developed by other universities. We have to move from a consumer mode to a contributor mode, where universities can create your own courses, and you can not only offer it to your own students in the online mode, because the current regulations of UGC and AICTE give universities which can leverage this 20%, and now it is increased to 40%, which personally I think is too much. I think 20% is an optimal flexibility, freedom. where you can actually make students complete a degree program with your own courses developed in the online mode, and in the process also use ABC to offer your own online courses to students of other universities, not only in India, but outside India. And that takes us to the third dimension of the people, because no longer is this learner community very local. And that's why I said we'll have to remove ODL. This concept of territorial jurisdiction has to go away. The entire world needs to learn from institutions in different places. So to me, a learner community is breaking geographical boundaries, and brick and mortar institutions like us have to leverage on the emerging opportunities and offer these online certificate programs or diplomas or degree programs to a learning community which is beyond the Indian geographical borders. The last one is on language, which is again very exhaustively dealt in part 3, section 22. I just will give you 10 seconds to read the cartoon. According to this poll, when asked if there was sufficient English as a second language instruction in the school district, 35% of ESL students said yes, and 65% didn't understand the question. So too much of a single language oriented education system is actually not delivering the desired outcome. It might deliver the desired outcome in certain degree programs, but not necessarily in all programs. And we need to understand that the language has to be very, very correct, especially in these social endeavors of a teaching learning mechanism. If language is not correct, what is said is not what is meant. And if what is meant is not said, what needs to be done remains undone. And this is a very profound statement that all of us need to understand, because there is tons of literature that talks about various cognitive neuro-linguistic studies that proves that native language education has a positive impact in the formative years of a student's lifelong learning process. And that is why this language education need not necessarily be looked within the prism of higher education institutions. Higher education institutions have a responsibility to integrate backwards with the school education, and that's where the language teachers, in-service language teachers in school education is very essential, because we need to blend language education and create a bridge between school education and higher education. And this important dimension is talked at length by the NEP in its document. And to make a change, we have to just make some structural adjustments in the curriculum. Maybe the core subjects can be taught in the regional languages, which AICT has made an attempt in some of the engineering courses, or begin with certain allied courses, or offer certain open electives, which means you have to begin unbundling your curriculum to identify a bunch or a portfolio of courses that can accommodate teaching those courses in native language. And slowly, if you make that process accelerated, you will one fine day come to a conclusion that teaching in the native language has actually made students understand even core subjects better. Not alone just the open electives are allied, but even the core degree. And for that, it has to happen in a very phased manner. Then to just make a quantum jump and then start with core programs, because it's a big challenge. And I'll talk about that as my concluding point. And much of the language efforts that universities have taken have been either in the literative part, where we have done a lot of research on the literative language, or the communicative part, more importantly, English as a spoken language. We have to broaden this scope of literative versus communicative to accommodate various other language-centric initiatives that can align with our Indian knowledge systems, which predominantly is embedded in various forms of arts, culture, or medicine. And more importantly, all of them having tons of information that can be translated into wisdom in the local language. And that's where we have a clear competitive edge. There are many universities outside India that have endowed chairs to understand what's the wisdom that lies hidden in the local languages that transcend boundaries of arts, culture, and medicine. time has come for our own universities to take that effort and unlock the knowledge explosion that is hidden in the Indian knowledge systems. And I feel that language has the extreme propensity to unlock this potential. There will be challenges definitely, because you need a huge program that can create capacity building of teachers. Translation is another challenge. We need technology tools that are very perfect and effective. And as I said before, not all programs are language compatible. So we need to develop programs, and over a period, course neutrality should be translated and transformed into program neutrality, and also build a community of students who will also be recruited or who will come successful in their life because their student outcome is not linked with the medium of instruction. They are also very competitive, and it becomes language independent. So friends, I will conclude my presentation only with one small thought. The nation is celebrating Aurobindo's 150th anniversary. And we recall that Aurobindo, when he was having a cup of tea in the beaches of Pondicherry, where he used to spend those times of intellectualism when the revolutionary times of those days cut intellectualism into mainstream action. Aurobindo was in pitch darkness in Pondicherry. And there was one mystic man called Kullachami, about whom the famous poet Subramanya Bharati has written. He came close to Aurobindo, snatched the cup of tea, and emptied the tea. And Aurobindo was in a state of ecstasy and said, I have found a solution. His friend said, what have you found? You lost your tea. He said, Pullachami has asked me to empty my thoughts, the old thoughts, and start thinking new. Friends, NEP 2020 has a lot for you to start thinking new. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a very, very impressive talk that you ended with empty your cup. If permitted, may I ask Professor N. Jayashankaran to please start his presentation on outcome-based education and skill development, upon which then we will take the question and answers together for the entire session. Sir, please.
Evening to all of you, respected advisor to NAAC, Dr. Sujata Shanbhat, Dr. Priya Narayanan, my esteemed earlier speakers, Dr. Tyagarajan and Dr. Vaidhi Subramaniam, very distinguished academicians from Northeast region. It is sheer inspiration on the part of NAAC to have organized these series of workshops to sensitize the major important points in the National Education Policy 2020. For your information, I was born before independence. I have been in academics for more than 52 years. I had the privilege of reading all the education reports, starting from Radhakrishnan report, Kothari report, Jnanam report, Sam Pitrada report, T.S.R. Subramaniam, and now Kasur Rangan. Lots of educational policy reports have come. I've been reading all these with a lot of interest. I asked the basic question, what is the role of colleges and universities? I'll briefly try to connect to all the topic that we have discussed today. So what is the basic role of colleges and universities? It is Cardinal Newman, who is one of the great thinkers, who is a founder of Oxford University, Cardinal John Henry Newman, for the benefit of those youngsters who have not seen this book, An Idea of an University. Amazing book. He says the purpose of an university or a college is the cultivation of the mind and illumination of the intellect. If you look at some of these great authors, they have a strong philosophical view about education itself. The goal of education is to help build a fairer, most just society. Coming to Radhakrishnan, an university is not an information shop. It is a place where the student's emotion, will, intellect, and are disciplined. An university is a sanctuary of the intellectual life of a nation, and pursuit of knowledge is the very soul of an university. In all these definitions, you find there is no mention about employability, there is no mention about skills, and they are all talking about cultivation of the mind and illumination of the intellect, and higher levels of philosophical thoughts as the goal of an education. Today, unfortunately, there is a conflict between what higher educational institutions are doing and what the corporate or industry wants. There is a huge gap between what we do and what the society expects. The uh, outsiders want the students to be getting a good job at the end of the program. Their focus is on getting a job and getting good salary. Whereas as an insider, as an academician, my focus is the student should be educated for the next 50 years of self-fulfillment. I am not training a student to get the first job. At the end of 6 months, he may lose the job. What happens to the education that I have given him? Therefore, as an academician, my focus is to provide a direction for my students to live a fulfilled life for the next 50 years. Unfortunately, the trouble is students want both the short-term and the long-term goals. The ancient collision between each student's short-term and long-term goals still exists between training and education, between vocational and general, between honing of the mind and nourishing of the soul, divides the professional educators, divides the outside critics and supporters, and divides the students too. So, today higher education institutions are expected to provide the youth of this country the opportunity for the development of their skills and competencies so that they realize their full potential and fulfill their aspirations. There are many techniques and tools that are being used. One of the techniques that we are going to discuss today is outcome-based education and skill development. There are two tools. I'm going to talk on both. What is this outcome-based education? And there are so many definitions for this outcome-based education. I'm not going to complicate OBE by giving all these definitions. I'll make it as simple as possible. Outcome-based education, in any academic system, there are inputs and outputs. Even in those days when we do an academic audit for a university, we look at whether this is a 3-credit course. If it's a 3-credit course, the teacher must have taught it for 45 sessions. He must have conducted 3 tests, 2 assignments, 1 midterm examination, 1 final examination, probably a project and a comprehensive EVA. There can be so many components for the assessment. Therefore, when somebody does an audit of the university's academic program, they look at only these inputs, whether the teacher has taught for 45 sessions, if it's a 3-credit course, whether he has conducted the midterm exam, final examination, whether 3 tests have been done, 2 assignments are given, whether they have been evaluated and given to the students in time. These are all the things that we have been doing as part of academic audit. But remember, all these are inputs. At the end of the day, an academic institution exists only to make sure that the students learn. We are focusing on teaching, whereas the focus must be on learning. I have taught a course for 45 sessions, whether the students have learned it for 5 sessions, 10 hours, 15 hours, all the 45 hours, or nil. How are you going to measure that? So, instead of measuring the inputs, they started measuring the outputs. Basically, outcome-based education, if you look at the broad definition of outcome-based education, is a learner-centric learning philosophy that focuses on measuring students' performance, namely the outcomes. OBE itself is not a teaching tool or a teaching style or a teaching method. It's a principle for designing your teaching in an effective way that enables learning happen and helps the students to achieve the intended learning outcomes. Therefore, what matters most in OBE is what is learned rather than what is taught. Inputs are what is taught, output is what is learned. Instead of looking at the inputs, let us try to measure the outputs. This is not something new. Even in 1985, 90s, many countries attempted this. Some countries have abandoned this also. I'm not going into that. This is not something new. Washington Accord picked up this. India is a signatory to Washington Accord. Therefore, for all the engineering programs, particularly professional program, AICT followed this, and many other universities started following for other courses also. So let us try to understand what is this OBE. There is also another terminology, because I come from the management stream. There is another well-known concept which is known as AOL, assurance of learning. Some of the management teachers, who have gone through the AICSB accreditation or AMBA accreditation or even EQUIS accreditation, they'll be very familiar with the concept of AOL, assurance of learning. When you teach a course to the students, you will have to make sure that the students understand. You measure their performance of the entire class, and closely you will have to monitor their progression and then see whether there is an improvement in the learning process. The very purpose, as I said, of an academic institution is to make students learn. Don't focus on teaching. You design your teaching methodology, design your curriculum, your pedagogy and assessment systems in such a way that ultimately the maximum students can learn the maximum input that I have given to them. So there should be a methodology by which you are able to measure. There are so many tools available. I'm not going into it. I'm just mentioning it for those who are interested. You can do a Google search and try to find out how AOL is done, how the attainments of the courses are calculated. How do you make sure that there's an improvement in their learning process? All that has to be done. So there are many terminology that we academicians use without actually going into the real implications of what it conveys. One is, most abused word is student-centric learning process, teacher-centric. Now I have a small problem here. So I base some of my arguments under the thought process of very great thinking educationists like Clayton Christensen. Most of you must be aware, he was a professor of in Harvard University, great thinker. He has written lots of books. One is Disruptive Class. I strongly recommend this to most of my colleagues here who are participating in this. Disruptive Class is one excellent book that he has written. Another book is Innovative University. These two are excellent treatises on higher education given by Clay. We used to call him as Clayton Christensen. There, makes a very important point. Now we say the program that I am offering should be student-centric, learner-centric. These are all very nice to hear. But if you look at the profile of the students in a class, profile of the students in a university, profile of the students in the entire country, how do you partition them into various baskets? Now he suggests, even NAAC understand, the pace at which students learn. There are slow learners, there are medium learners, there are fast or advanced learners. So the pace at which the students learn, there are three varieties. Based on the behavior of the students in the class, man studies, MANN, man studies shows there are 8 types of behavior exhibited by the students in the class. Many a times we faculty expect the students to be obedient all the time. No. Research shows only 10% of the students will be obedient in the class. Remaining 26% will be teacher dependent. They want to be guided by the teacher, mentored by the teacher. That's very large. Then there are heroes who come to the class only to socialize and tell other students that I am the top student here. No, he's not interested in learning. He wants to show off. There are snippers who will keep on criticizing the college, the teachers, the classmates, the curriculum, everything. They'll be very cynic and negative. So, man studies show there are 8 types of students. If you have gone through Gardner's multiple intelligence, he's again a Harvard professor, psychology professor, he talks about 8 types of intelligence, multiple intelligence. Some can have numerical intelligence, some can have kinesthetic intelligence, some have spatial intelligence, some may have interpersonal intelligence. There are 8 types of intelligence. So Clayton asks, there are 3 types at which the pace of the students learn. There are 8 types of behavior. There are 8 multiple intelligence. So a simple mathematics shows 8 into 8 into 3 will come to 192. Therefore, in any university system or any country, you will have lots of students in any of these 192 baskets. When you really say that I am offering a customized student-centric program, your curriculum must be designed to meet the requirement of every basket. Your teaching methodology must be in tune with the requirement of the students in that basket. The assessment that you do also must be specific to that basket. That is what is the meaning of student-centric or learner-centric. Do you have 192 methods of curriculum design, teaching methodology, and evaluation system? No. While every curriculum has to be customized, teaching methodology to be customized, assessment to be customized, we standardize everything. What do we do in universities? We standardize. Curriculum is standardized, teaching methodology is standardized. One question paper across all 800 and odd affiliated colleges, question papers are standardized. As if this is not enough, regulatory authorities give their own norms. How do you standardize? Now we are talking about customization on one side. What we do is standardization, just the opposite of what we are supposed to do. But at the end of the day, we all talk, it should be student-centric, it should be learner-centric, it should not be teacher-centric, it should not be content-centric. All this we talk. This is only a point of view that I'm trying to say, but there is an important point when we say it is student-centric. That's why I come to outcome-based education. When you are trying to design a curriculum, you try to understand what are the needs, what are the aspirations of the students. Generally, the curriculum is designed by the faculty team. I have sat in most of the Board of Studies Academic Council. What happens is every teacher wants to convey whatever he has learned to be in the curriculum. If I am a marketing professor, I want all marketing courses to be there. If I am a quantitative professor, I want business analytics to be there, then data analytics should be there, HR analytics should be there, everything should be there. HR person would like to dump everything that he knows. So the problem that we make while designing the curriculum, all experts sitting in that group wants to convey whatever he has learned, but that's not necessary. At the end of the day, we dump so much into the curriculum, there is no time for the student to think independently on their own. While we say we should be able to think creatively, innovatively, that's why Clayton says in innovative university, most of the universities cannot be innovative because you have structured rigid systems. In a very rigid system, how do you make innovation? Innovation means you will have to question the status quo. You will have to think of a new process, right? That flexibility must be available for department, for the universities, and for bigger systems also, right? So when I say student-centric, at least in a classroom, you must be able to understand their aspirations, their needs, their requirement, their likes. I will have to design a curriculum which will meet their requirements. To a small extent, we must try to do that. Let me not try to dump whatever I know into the curriculum. That's not the right thing to do. With the result, we overload the curriculum. There is no time for the students to think independently on their own. Therefore, in the outcome-based education, the focus is more on outcome. Here again, we use several terminology. Let me try to clarify. We talk about course objectives. Then we talk about learning outcomes, program-specific outcomes. Those of you who are connected with the NBA and also AICTE engineering program will be familiar with all these. They are all borrowed from Washington Accord. All of them are new to the Indian academicians because what they call as a program, we call it as a course. What they call as a course, we call it as a subject. Most of the Indian academicians, our vocabulary is slightly different. Therefore, when you talk about outcome-based education, you try to understand the needs of the student profile. Now, how many of us do? As a matter of fact, ideally, only when the students are admitted, that's what I used to do in my institute. We give a broad framework of the curriculum, the exact contents you decide in the classroom. depending upon whether 90% of the students are engineers, IIT, then I can pitch the curriculum to a higher level, right? So in the outcome-based education, the focus is on students learning and not on teachers' ability to convey a particular theory. There are four basic principles in OBE system. Clarity of focus. When you go for OBE, you are very clear as to what the students are supposed to learn at the end of the program. When a student sits for a course, I will be able to decide the course objectives. Course objectives are decided by the teacher. Learning outcomes, from my point of view, what do I expect the students to learn? Their learning outcomes, right? So, the learning outcomes, when I decide, I will have to also see how am I going to measure all this. These are the learning outcomes. How do I measure whether the students have acquired all these skills? Again, when you talk about outcome, it can be knowledge, it can be skills, it can be attitude, it can be human values, right? Tyagarajan talked about several dimensions of the personality of the individual. You have intellectual dimension, you have physical dimension, you have emotional dimension, aesthetic dimension, social dimension, spiritual dimension. When you talk about a course and talk about learning outcomes, it can be about the knowledge, it can be about the skills, it can be about the attitudes, it can be about what kind of human values they need to pick up, right? All of them can be in the outcome. Therefore, depending upon whether you are expecting the student to pick up a knowledge or pick up a skill or pick up an attitude or values, the methodology of teaching will be different. When I am teaching a subject towards acquiring knowledge for my students, it can be a lecture method of teaching. If I want my students to pick up a skill, it has to be activity oriented. That is why we talk about problem solving methods or project based learning, experiential learning. All this we talk about because I'm interested in my students to pick up skills. Of course, attitude is very difficult to change the attitude of individual, but we must take an attempt. Human values also, right? So whenever you decide the learning outcomes, first you will have to map all the course content into any one of these, whether it is towards knowledge, towards skills, attitudes, or human values. Then what is the methodology that you are going to adapt? How are you going to measure it? Therefore, when you go for OBE system of education, you will have to look at the program objectives. What is the objective of designing this program? It can be BCom, BBA, BTech. What is the objective of the program? What are the program specific objectives? Then course objectives, then learning outcomes, right? Then you will have to decide how are you going to measure all these outcomes with the students. Then what kind of pedagogy you are going to design. That is one thing with regard to OBE. Now, it gives clarity, designing down from top down, from the students' expectations, you work out the curriculum. Expanded opportunities. When you expect the student, this is what I demand from you, probably they'll be motivated to rise up to your level of expectations and they'll be able to perform much better. So we call it as a backward design. You start from the identify the desired results from the student community. What are the desired results you want from them? Then determine acceptable evidence. How are you going to measure? Your assessment must be decided. Then plan 3, stage 3 is plan learning experiences. How do you create that ecosystem so that everyone in the system will be able to learn better? Because as I said, no two human beings are exactly the same. No two students can be exactly the same in the classroom. Therefore, we need to adopt different styles of teaching and different styles of assessment mechanism so that we will be able to measure whether all the students have reached the same desired levels of performance. I think I will close my OBE on this. I will take on to the skill part. The skill part is actually very, very interesting. This is a huge topic, and let me try to cover it within the time that is allotted to me. There is so much of confusion with respect to the skills. No, the government of India has taken lots of efforts to give these skills to the youth in our country. You know, domestic demographic dividend is there. Most of the young people in India, they are all young, and if you make them skilled people, you can actually transform the entire world. You can supply manpower to the rest of the world from India. But this is what we have been talking about. But what kind of skills we are trying to develop? You're able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So when you talk about skills, there are lower order skills, vocational skills, plumbing, carpentry, and electrician. So when we talk about skills, most of the time we talk about vocational skills, low order skills. But I was going through some of the interesting reports of World Bank and stepping up skill. That is the title of the article. I strongly refer this article to many of the participants here. They call STEP is an acronym for Skills Towards Employability and Productivity. Stepping up skills. That is the title of the article available in the World Bank report. Now, they clearly say that as a nation, when you are talking about skills, you don't talk about the ordinary vocational skills. You must be able to talk about higher order thinking skills. What are the higher order thinking skills that you are looking at as a nation? Simply because many universities produce lots of degree holders, this is not going to improve the economy of the nation. Economy of the nation will improve only when you produce people with higher order thinking skills. Actually, they have identified 5 areas. I will not go into it, I will just mention. They talk about expert thinking. What is expert thinking? Most of the time we are talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Whereas World Bank in higher order thinking skills, they talk about expert thinking. What cannot be done by the machine? Let us talk about real intelligence. Let us not talk about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can do something which real intelligence cannot do, but we have created these machineries and areas, right? So, expert thinking, they say, which cannot be done by the machine. Only expert can do it. That is expert thinking. For example, outstanding doctors who diagnose a disease, looking at the symptoms, that is expert thinking. Complex communication. This is different from normal communication. First, the communication within the human person must be collinear. We think, we speak, we do. Thought, word, and deed. You're talking about IKS, that's what they have been saying. Thought, word, and deed must be collinear. Manasyekam, vachasyekam, karmanyekam, mahatmana. Gandhiji was considered as Mahatma. Why? Whatever he thought, he spoke. Whatever he spoke, he did. Thought, word, and deed must be collinear. The problem that we face today is most of us think one thing, say another thing, do a third thing. And that is the second part of the sloka. Manasyekam, vachasyekam, karmanyekam, mahatmanam. Manasanyate, vachasanyate, karmatanyate, duratmanam. You think one thing, say another thing, do a third thing, you are a duratma. Therefore, in complex communication, they say, first the internal communication of the individual must be straightened out. If you are having a muddled thinking, if you think one thing, say another thing, already the confusion or conflict arises within the human being. Therefore, you become a confused person. You may develop an efficiency to talk a language fluently. What will happen is you will convey that confused thinking fluently in a language. That's what will happen. Therefore, in complex communication, they talk about first you straighten the internal communication, then develop the external communication. Routine cognitive tasks, routine manual tasks, and non-routine manual tasks. These are all the broad higher order thinking that we are talking about for nation. As a nation, we will have to identify. Now, one thing that I find is when I look at all these policy reports, right from Radhakrishnan report, some of these issues we have been talking about for the last 70, 75 years. Same issues we are talking about. So the main problem to my mind is As a nation, are we good at implementation skills? Many a times, we think big, we talk big, but are we able to implement whatever we speak? In our policy statement, we say so many things. Implementation is the problem. Many issues that Radhakrishnan talked about in his report, even now we are talking about it. After 70 years. Now that means we have not implemented many of the suggestions given in the earlier report. And Tyagarajan also made a mention about what are the challenges in implementation of these policies. So, if you want to go into these competencies right from childhood, you will have to develop learning skills, problem solving skills, communication skills, personal skills, and social skills. Therefore, India requires skill development policy. Now we have so many other items are there, skill development, all those programs are there in India. But to my mind, we still have to develop a skill development policy at a much higher level, higher order thinking. Because as universities, we must look at higher order thinking and not to look at lower order vocational training kind of thing. I think that can be taken care of by other institutions. Probably the diploma institution can take care of that. As a university, you must be able to focus more on higher order thinking skills. And if you do that, I think we'll be able to really train all our youngsters into skilled people, and that will be really good in improving the employability. I will also refer one study done by Bloomberg. This is for the benefit of those who are in management education. They have identified 14 skills. Of the 14 skills, Bloomberg studies show numerical skills, motivation and drive, entrepreneurship, global mindset, decision making, risk taking. These are all the skills that are given by most of the B schools, but not wanted by the corporate, because they are all hygiene factors. You must have all these skills when you are a management student. Skills fairly common, sought after by recruiters: analytical thinking, ability to work in teams. Skills less common and also not sought after is adaptability, industry related work experience. Ultimately, they have identified 4 skills. They call it as a sweet spot, very rare skill that companies want across the globe. Number 1, communication skills, leadership skills, creative problem solving skills, and strategic thinking skills. I think these are all the skills that we need to develop with our youngsters. If you do that, I think you'll be able to improve the employability, and also you'll be able to improve the skills of the students who are committed to our care at a higher level. We are not talking about skills at a lower level, vocational level. We are thinking about higher order thinking skills. That is where I would request most of the top universities to focus on, so that we will be able to create top leaders not only for India, also to the corporates across the globe. Thanks for the opportunity. If there are questions, I'll be happy to take.
Thank you very much, sir. May I request the participants to please raise their hands and across their names so that I can call you upon for the questions. Participants, please. Meanwhile, we have few questions on the chat box. Here, Dr. Mona Lisa B. Deka. So she has asked that they're using LOCF syllabus that is as prescribed by UGC. Is it not the same as outcome-based education?
Yeah, learning outcome, I think that is OB only. OB only.
Sir, but sir, one more, may I ask the question?
Yes, please. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Mona Lisa B. Deka from University of Science and Technology, Meghalaya. Hello?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, so we have recently we have started with the LOCF syllabus as prescribed by UGC, and where we offer a basket of courses. Like we have the GE courses, we have the DSC courses, we have AECC courses. Like in our previous presentation, there was a slide stress was given for language based. So for sir AECC, like we being in Meghalaya, our medium of instruction has to be English because most of our students are from the Meghalaya state, though we have from other states too. So sir, in AECC we give a stress upon communicative English. But sir, as our honorable speaker had said that to give a stress on native language. So here, sir, the hurdle is the native language being of Meghalaya is Khasi. We have students from Assam, which is Assamese. So likewise, sir, this way, how do we tackle this problem, sir?
To whom is this question? Is it related to OBE or related to language based?
Language.
Language, sir. Language, sir.
Okay, good. So it's a good question. So that is why I had also cautioned universities to make a gradual shift when you're desiring to choose language-based education or using language as an instrument to impart new knowledge. So if the native language is very unique and cannot widen the scope to make it more inclusive because students are from different other states, the only thing is you only have to give a 101 type course on the native language even to the other students. So it's kind of, see, when we as Indians are ready to learn a foreign language like German or Japanese or Mandarin, which is actually a 101 course that's delivered in universities, are we not responsible to also offer these type of native language courses to our own students coming from neighboring states and other states at a 101 level? So when we start there, we make a small beginning. And then if you are able to gradually build, I'm not talking about your university. There might be other universities where the majority of the students are in the native language. So there will be some chance for some degree programs to only make good the findings of all those studies that says that, native language education improves the cognitive skills of students. And if we are making this effort at the higher education, then we are missing a lot of deficit that has already happened in the school education. And that is why I strongly urged that this language is a good medium to integrate and develop relationship between universities and school educations, where the role of university teachers and especially language teachers is to build this language bridge in the school education system to make a natural transition.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Professor M.P. Bora, you have raised your hands. You have a question. You may please unmute yourself.
Yeah, Dr. Badya has already actually partially answered my question, because what we see nowadays in modern India, most of the students which are actually coming to university education, they are basically, we should say, English educated, coming from a private school. I mean, most of the, if you go about the good, like meritorious, they always believe in the private education. And private education is school education in India is inevitably English based. So even I have seen had principals are advocating speaking English at home also to improve all these things. Now, in the midst of in these things, what we find in university like a state university in Assam, Guwahati University, we find that when we start educating a course like I'm from physics, a technical course like physics, even in physics also we use a lot of English language where the knowledge of the language is actually necessary. But what I find that even in every now and then the students do not get the meaning of the sentences simply because they don't know
I think there is a connectivity issue with
Dr. Bora.
Boraji. Sir, would you like to take up the question?
Yeah, I think I just got the question when he was just about to finish. So that's where, I personally feel, as somebody who's also teaching courses, that there are certain terminologies which, you have to struggle to find a native equivalence. So you use those terminologies in English, but the concept behind the terminology, if you can use a local language to explain, the way in which a student will understand it, I think, in my experience, will be far better than the way in which he would have understood otherwise had you continued to do it in English language, because English is a medium of instruction. So we need to have a mindset change that English is a language, not a status. So the more and more, we think that it is a status, the more and more we actually fail on the outcomes that are supposed to be delivered. As Professor Jaishankaran said, no, the outcome is not just whether it's student centric or faculty centric. It is on what needs to be delivered from the course. If that delivery mechanism can be strengthened in part in local or native language, I would say that you do that.
So sorry, I got disconnected.
Yeah,
So we got your questions and
yeah,
sir is answering it. Yeah.
we just kind of extrapolated your question ourselves, and so I just finished answering saying that no harm in having a blended language also, to use English wherever it is unavoidable, and complex concepts taught in native language will stick to the student for a lifelong time, then to struggle with English language and then leaving the concepts not fully taught.
So we have a question in chat from Dr. Pranab Sandilya. Now the question is, can we develop skill-based policies based on local requirements in the college, keeping in mind of the undergraduate students? I think this question is over to Jaishankaranji.
Yeah. See, this is very, very important. You need to look at the local capabilities in a particular thing. For example, carpet weavers in Kashmir, or potters in Rajasthan, or even idol making in Swami Malai. They are all, extremely competent people, and packets of excellence exist across the country. So if we can focus on those skills and then try to make sure that you don't lose these skills in the next generation, that will be a great thing. At the undergraduate level, you must be able to do it. Lots of
In
skills
fact,
available. As a matter of fact, even quality, if you want good quality, you go to the villages. They don't know what is TQM, they don't know what is Six Sigma, but the quality of their products will be fantastic. So you need to encourage that.
in fact, if I can just add these clusters, skill clusters that Professor Jaishankaran mentioned, these are, in my opinion, open air universities themselves. In fact, we should not have a policy that should ask those people to come and study here and get a degree. Universities must be empowered to go and offer them a degree. We should tell them, look, you have these skills, please take our degree. Because they are also craving for an academic identity, for an vocational ability that they already are endowed with.
Correct.
Are we trying to bring in the community college concept here?
Yes, see, community colleges also have a compulsory teaching component, which ideally, you should actually encourage students from these skill-based clusters to also integrate with community colleges. So that's one part. The second part that I'm asking, I'm aspiring for is, you already have people with enough knowledge that you actually have to certify them. Don't come and ask them to, get fit into your NSQF framework and all of that. They're already beyond that.
Lovely, sir. Do we have any more questions? Because I don't see any hands raised, or the chat box is also almost exhausted. Participants, so if that is time to close up, then I would propose the vote of thanks.
I just want to just give a personal analogy because
Please.
we still have 8 minutes. So since Professor Jaishankaran mentioned about my own Professor Clay there. So Professor
Yeah,
Clay, I was a student of Professor Clay Christensen himself, a 7-footer.
great.
And when he enters the class in Harvard, people at the end of every class learn something new. And why am I bringing Professor Clay again? Because I touched upon online education. Do you know that Professor Clay used to handle classes for an online course, not for Harvard University, but the world's largest online universities are the Phoenix University, those types of universities. So what University of Phoenix used to do is hire one of the best auditoria in Boston. Perfect acoustics, videos, everything excellent. And they hire Professor Clay to deliver a course on disruptive technologies or innovation. I mean, he was the author of disruptive technologies. So, and the Harvard ecosystem allows a tenure professor to also take classes and make money for any other learner outside. So he goes there and takes the class in the auditorium. And to actually make sure that the best of Clay is delivered, the best of a faculty is delivered only if there is a live audience. But then it's very difficult to get the auditorium packed with students who want to learn a course that is yet to be offered. So you know what Phoenix University used to do? This Professor Clay himself has actually told this. They used to hire some of the best models, pack them and put them inside the auditorium. So Professor Clay delivers the lecture. And if it is only Professor Clay face that you are seeing in a lecture, you will get bored. And immediately the videos, go to the audience, they show different models, and then they pep up the online content. And then again, back to Clay. And that's how they package these online programs as well. So I am not saying that we'll have to build a deceiving wrapper around the program. All that I'm saying is we have enough core content in our own Indian knowledge systems that has to be encouraged and delivered in the online mode. See, that is why I've always been repeatedly saying that there are lots of courses that can be delivered to learners in the online mode and need not necessarily be courses that are taught in the conventional mode. And that is why I find that the UGC regulation that only if it is offered in the conventional mode, it has to be offered in the online mode is a little bit retrograde. We will have to allow universities to just offer online courses just like that as long as they have the capacity and faculty. I'll stop here.
Can I take a couple of minutes? It's a nice point that Vaidya has said. You see, many of the Indian knowledge systems, they have time-tested methodologies for the benefit of those from northeastern states. Down south, we have a discipline known as Ayurveda. Ayurveda, why did it come? There was a Dhanurveda. In those days, every king will be fighting with a neighboring king. Therefore, you need to fight. When you are fighting, you get injured. Somebody will chop your nose, somebody will chop your ears, and you need to handle them. So the entire Ayurveda, they want to create medicines. They mastered on metallurgy. There are Tamarabaswam, there are mercurial compounds which can be converted as medicine. There are gold, Tamarabaswam, Tangabaswam. All those metallurgy, they are converting these metals into medicines. Then they study the entire plant sciences. Which root of a plant will give you the relief? Which bark of a tree will give you the relief? Which leaves, which flowers? Then they studied animal sciences. Animal sciences, they'll be talking about what are the properties of a cow's milk, she buffalo's milk, she camel's milk. They talk about animal sciences. If you look at Varaha Mihira, Brihat Samhita, first chapter will talk about the behavior of birds. Second chapter will talk about behavior of dogs. Third chapter will talk about formation of clouds. You will not know what is the connection between all these three, four. Come to the fifth chapter, they will use all this knowledge to make a prediction of earthquakes. 3 days before the earthquake happens, if you have a sharp observation, you can observe all this, you will be able to predict earthquake. Again, they will start about plant sciences, they will go to geology. Third chapter will talk about how do you identify water column in a mountainous terrain. They all look different, but they are connected by a sutra. That's why we call our scriptures sutra, Brahma Sutra, Bhakti Sutra, Jnana Sutra. Sutra means a thread. So there is a thread of knowledge. Thread you will not be able to see. That's why if you look at the Shankara Bhashyam for Brahma Sutra, they are known as Sangati. First sutra and second sutra, they are connected. It is the commentator who will give the connection. Second sutra, third sutra will be connected. Four sutras are known as Pada, Pada Sangati. First four and the next four are connected. Then Adhyaya Sangati. First chapter, second chapter are connected. This is an amazing tool which Indian seers have used for thousands of years. We don't have to learn from multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary from abroad. That is the Indian concept. Vaidya Subramaniam focused on it. You have a problem. To handle that problem, you take tools from different disciplines. It can be from geology, it can be from plant sciences, it can be from metallurgy, it can be from animal sciences. At the end of the day, I want to cure an injured person. I want a medicine. That is the thing. So they were amazingly good in this. You must look at some of the ancient scriptures to understand this. Then we'll be able to offer really useful multidisciplinary courses. Otherwise, asking an engineer to take a course on anatomy or a doctor to take a course on Python, that is not multidisciplinary. You must have a link. That sutra is important.
In
Sutra
fact,
is important.
if I'm just given 10 seconds, I just wanted to also let my friends from Northeast India know that one of the projects where our Shastra University engineering students were involved with the Tata Group was developing a drone to prevent the rhino poaching for the rhino horns in the Kaziranga forest there. So we spend time there to understand what the problem is, how people come, the movements of the rhino, the environmental patterns, all of that, and developed a drone system that virtually reduced the poaching of rhinos. And this was a social problem.
Correct, correct.
So I think it is time to formally wind up the session if the speakers allow me to. I just read in the Sunday's newspaper in a very small letters, it was written that if a new technology rolls over you, and if you're not part of the stream roller, then you're part of the road. Very wonderfully said. NEP is not that redefining the education system. It is defining the education system. So that's the way. And here we needn't have to undo everything, whatever we are doing. But there is always, if you're going to do the same thing again and again, and you expect a different result, and we will only be mastering the art of ambiguity. Now here we have actually the streamlined thinking, the streamlined process that we need to put up, and the changes wherever required, so that you would be attaining a new phase of knowledge that we need to give our students to participants. It was a great pleasure connecting Tripura to Tamil Nadu. And it is indeed wonderful to have you all here in the forum. And my sincere thanks to Professor S.P. Tyagarajan. With all his busy schedule, when he said that we have a special address in Northeast region, he set aside all his commitments, and with profound memories and with profound volunteering, he came here and he gave us a very good lecture on multidisciplinary education and academic bank of credit. Indeed, he also spent his time in clarifying many of our doubts. And I like to place my thanks in his absentia to Professor Vaidyanathan. You had connected Cambodia to Georgia, and you've given a very good international pursuits connecting the local to global. Thereby, you became very local in nature also. Thank you very much, sir. And indeed, your session on integration of Indian languages, very pertinent. Interdisciplinarity education, straight nailed on the head. And distance education on ODL spoke many things. And thank you very much for setting up your time and interacting with our friends from Northeast. Sir, Professor N. Jayashankar, sir. Indeed, it's pleasure again to hear your lecture on outcome-based education and skill development. You touched upon various subjects and the nitty-gritties in outcome-based education and skill developments also. In fact, I totally agree with your point that every corner of India and every village of India, we have no dearth of skill. But only thing is that we need to connect it with the education system that we have, where these two stands, as separate parallel tracks as such. Thank you very much, sir. And I would like to thank our director, Professor S.V. Sarma, for giving us this opportunity of connecting all of you in a similar platform and understanding about things. It is not impossible. It is only the possible that you have to take it in your mind with which a positive outlook. You will be able to see a lot of things that you will be able to do with the help of national education policy. And indeed, I also thank the Ministry of Education for giving us an opportunity to take up this task and bring it to you. I hope there will be more and more sessions like this. And if you're interested, you may please keep a watch in NAAC portal. We will also inform you through email to register in the future sessions and with different speakers and of course with a different topic as well about relating to NEP. Right now, Sujata ma'am, may we close the session if it is all right?
Yes, Priya.
Ma'am, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. That's what this is the first program for the northeastern region, and we will be conducting many more like this, and it will be informed through our websites and if possible through emails. And if you have anything particular, you can write to NAAC so that we will conduct these programs on a specific topic or all the themes of the NEP parameter which are assigned to NAAC. You can tell us. I once again thank the experts on behalf of NAAC and my personal behalf and all the participants, and hope this was a useful one, and all of us will start working towards implementing the NEP. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. So we end the session here formally.
Officially, we will be closing it. Samuel.
Thank you.